Welcome to our conversation today about breast health and the importance of getting mammograms in a timely way. As we think back, for those of us who've already had mammograms, what were some of those questions that first came to mind? Or if you've not had one yet, what's on your mind?
So for me, I am coming into the last year of my 30s, slowly approaching age 40, knowing that this is an important screening that's coming up for me. And it's really about, where do I start? Do I need to have a conversation with my doctor? Do I drive that? Will she come to me about it? What are the options for screening and how soon should I start?
Those are always big questions. I think even when you've been doing screenings for years, and it's like, what kind of screenings? What does it feel like? How do I even know? And does insurance cover it? I think there's so many questions that people have about cancer screenings and breast health. It's like, where do you go? Who do you ask?
Generally, if you don't have any other risks, then your doctor will just have the conversation with you about, based on your risk factors, your family history, this is when you should start. And so that's why, having that relationship with your doctor is really important.
Started going at 40, and I've been going since 48 now, and now my family history includes a maternal aunt and 2 maternal cousins. So a lot of family history, and so I make sure to go on a regular basis.
When I first started, I think I was 39 or 40 when I first started. It was just part of the regular, this is what you're supposed to do, so I did it. I was a rule follower back then. The first time is really strange. I don't know how you felt the first time you went in, but it was just like, take everything off and then come stand in this room and we're gonna put you on this little platform
Right,
and
yeah.
well, stand here.
And squish you.
For me, it didn't exactly go down that way. It was undress, but here's a robe, and then you stay totally covered, and then you take, bare one side, bare the other. So you're not like standing there.
But yeah, I went every year for several years and then I stopped because I was too busy. And I never had any concern that they would find anything because there was no family history for me really that would have caused any concern to even think about that earlier. So, you don't really think about it until it happens. And then all of a sudden, it's like, well, we see something.
And so often that happens when you're juggling kids and family and work and all the other things, making it a priority to get in is really challenging.
As women, we oftentimes do a great job of taking care of everybody else around us.
Yep.
And all of a sudden, we're not taking care of ourselves. But that's the importance of getting it done,
Right.
Every year in case something does change.
Absolutely. I had a previous mammogram, and they're like, we see something. Wait while the radiologist takes a look at this. Well, it turned out it was just a shadow. But what's so interesting is then they can look back, like the next time you go in, that was just a shadow. This time, that was microcalcifications. It's okay. But they'll know it for next time. Whereas if you don't do it, then it can be scary and it's an unknown at that point. But if you're doing it regularly, they have that record.
To your point, Carrie, it's really important that you have those consistent screenings so that they can check and say, oh, yes, this is what it looked like. This is what we saw. We're going to mark it. And they are so kind and they understand how uncomfortable it is. So they totally make you feel at ease.
I think what's so nice is like they're very matter of fact about what you need to get done. So it's not a big deal in a sense, but they're also very, very kind. And they're, just explaining every step of the way so there's no mystery. And I just had my mammogram done a few weeks ago. And even at one point, she's like, okay, well, I'm going to have to touch you here. Is that okay? And so nothing was a surprise. And that just makes all the difference in the world.
One of the challenges I had is because I had waited so long between appointments, I really didn't have a primary care doctor that I was comfortable with when I finally went in 5 or 7 years later for my mammogram that I hadn't done in that many years. That was a challenge because I didn't feel like I had anybody. But I do have to say that I went in and I'm like, really cavalier. It's like, okay, let's get this done. And they said, okay, well, hold on just a minute. And I'm going to send a different radiologist look at this. And we're actually going to schedule you for another appointment for another screening. And I came back. They did another screening and the tech and the nurse pulled me aside and said, here's what's going to happen. And here's what we're going to do. We're going to do a biopsy, and I know this is really scary, and here's what it's going to look like, and here's how it's going to feel, and here's what to expect. And then the journey went on from there to actually being diagnosed with breast cancer. Just that initial screening, after you haven't been for so long, and you really don't have a primary care doctor to kind of hold your hand and help you through it, that's why I recommend definitely having a primary care doctor and not skipping 7 years.
We may not have a family history, but history starts somewhere. So now you are
I'm the history.
history for your future generation. I think that's also important, is to recognize that even if you don't have a family history, you could be the family history.
That is really interesting that you say that, because I hadn't really thought of me being the family history now. But because it was the first one. And then 10 years later, my mom, who is now in her 80s, was diagnosed with breast cancer. And so it is important to get those screenings. It is really something that we should do.
And don't be afraid, too, to have the conversations with your family. Like, for me, I didn't yet have the conversation with my own mother until about a week ago, you know?
Yeah.
And so have those conversations. Don't be afraid of them.
One of the things that I've heard is that people don't want to go get it because they're afraid of bad news.
Yes.
Much rather be in there and know early than go through what I saw my mother go through. Yeah.
And I think, very much knowing early gives you more options.
Absolutely.
So even if it's scary to find out something, the sooner you know, the sooner you can think through, what can I do?
And the better off your outcomes are. Breast cancer screening is a preventive benefit, and I don't think a lot of people know or understand that it's covered. So if they have health insurance, it's free. Heidi, what would you say to yourself?
Stop putting yourself last. Go and get the screening done. Advocate for yourself. Find the right doctor, because you're worth it and your family would agree.
I would say not knowing doesn't mean that there's nothing to know. And getting the test is essential, because it's very likely that everything's fine. But if it's not, it doesn't help to put it off.
It may be hard, but find a friend that can help you. Find a friend that will go with you and hold your hand, but do it.
I think for me, it wasn't scary, and it shouldn't be scary. If people feel like it's scary, like, what is scarier, like the fear of the unknown, or going in, finding out, and if you're diagnosed, taking care of it early?
I would say, in terms of thinking about mammograms, I think the anticipation of getting one is so much worse than actually getting it done. Because once you're there, it literally just takes a few minutes. They are so kind and they take care of you. And then you get your answer, and then you move on to the rest of your life. Well, thank you all for joining our conversation today to talk about breast health and the importance of breast cancer screening and getting those mammograms done in a timely way. And thank you so much for sharing your experiences and helping to provide some advice for others who are thinking about making sure that they're taking care of themselves.